All right, how's everybody doing? Hotep, how's everybody doing? Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. Today is Thursday, August 2nd, 2018. Thursday, August 2nd, 2018. I wanted to come on here for a few minutes, talk about this breaking news story out of Chicago. You know, we've been broadcasting on our Facebook fan page for about the past hour the protests that are taking place in Chicago, shutting down Lakeshore Drive. And all this is behind, what's behind this is protesters demanding the resignation of Mayor Rahm Emmanuel, mayor of Chicago, and police superintendent Eddie Johnson, who is African-American, but they are complaining about gun violence in the community. This is a massive march, protest. Protesters for 35 minutes today shut down all lanes of Lakeshore Drive between Irving Park and Fullerton for a planned anti-violence march, okay? So this is extremely important. So I've been watching this for about an hour or so. I sent out an email newsletter about this. I'm watching coverage on the internet on Channel 9, WGN Channel 9. They've been broadcasting on Facebook Live. We shared that Facebook Live broadcast on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, we have it going live right now on our Facebook fan page. So follow our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in, okay? So this is extremely important because they're right in the middle of primaries in Chicago, number one. Okay, so they have an opportunity to vote Mayor Rahm Emmanuel out of office. But the other thing is this is galvanizing support. And a lot of people know Mayor Rahm Emmanuel is a bad mayor. Some of the things that they're complaining about, they're chanting, Mayor Rahm Emmanuel has got to go. They're chanting 16 shots, which is alluding to the Laquan McDonald police killing, okay? And it took about 400 days for then Cook County State's attorney, or the district attorney, Anita Alvarez, to bring charges against the officer who shot and killed Laquan McDonald. And they had basically all the evidence there on video. They're complaining about at least 50 schools, public schools, closed in Chicago. They're complaining about taxpayer dollars, more dollars being taken from the school system to go to the police force. Okay, so there are a number of different complaints they have, legitimate complaints they have in Chicago. Okay, share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in as well. Okay, so we're reporting on this story out of Chicago. Protests are going on right now. This was a planned protest, right? And it is designed to put pressure on Mayor Rahm Emmanuel to resign from office, as well as the police superintendent. Now, I covered this story back during, 4 years ago, back during 2014, back when you had the mayoral election back then in Chicago. And when I was doing national radio then 5 days a week, I was on the Empowerment Radio Network, and I was also guest hosting Roland Martin's national radio show as well. And on my show, and when I used to guest host Roland's show, I was telling African Americans in Chicago, you have to come out and vote Mayor Rahm Emmanuel out of office. The protests are good. But back then, after he released the Laquan McDonald tape, you had all these massive protests that took place. On Black Friday, people were out on the Magnificent Mile on Michigan Avenue, which is like the main business district, and they were blocking the entrance to stores. They were standing out in the street, blocking traffic, things like this, and he's still mayor. So the protests are good. It helps draw attention to the problem, helps inform people about the problem, helps draw people into your plan, into your organization. But on election day, African Americans need to go out and vote Mayor Rahm Emmanuel out of office. He said back then in 2014, 2015, when the protests were exploding, he said he wasn't resigning, and he's still there today. So the protests have their purpose. But on election day, that's your opportunity to fire these people. That's your opportunity to vote them out of office, to fire them. And we have to leverage our economics to enforce our politics, okay? So let me share this story with you from WGN Channel 9 in Chicago, because they've been broadcasting. They're on the ground there. In Chicago, Lakeshore Drive, they've been broadcasting over an hour. I've been following it on Facebook Live. And let's see here. Let's see if there's still, I think they're still going on. So let's, okay, let's see if they're still going on. Let's turn on the audio, see what's going on here. Okay, see if we can hear something from on the ground. But protesters for 35 minutes Thursday shut down all lanes of Lakeshore Drive between Irving Park and Fullerton for a planned anti-violent march. Chicago Police Department spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said there were, quote unquote, no arrest or issues, no arrest or issues. Let me just tune in to see what's going on here. Okay. Things are calm. You can hear some background. You can hear some of the crowd, all right? Okay, so as of 5:05 p.m. on Thursday, and Chicago is on Central Standard Time, they are 1 hour behind Detroit. I'm in Detroit. It's 6:58 p.m. now, so they're an hour behind us. But as of 5:05 p.m. Thursday, probably Central Standard Time, the group had exited the highway and was walking toward Wrigley Field. The Chicago Cubs have a home game at 7:05 p.m. today. And it's good, it's probably good they did it on a day that the Chicago Cubs have a game, because this draws maximum attention to this. Now, I've been watching MSNBC. I haven't seen any coverage of this on MSNBC. This is one of the reasons why Facebook Live is so important, why the African History Network is so important, because we can bring you this type of information, even though they may show it later on MSNBC, but I've been watching. I haven't seen this really covered on MSNBC at all. Okay, so organizers said they are marching to demand the resignations of Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson and Mayor Rahm Emmanuel. Organizers claim the officials have failed in efforts to lower gun violence. Organizers claim the officials have failed in efforts to lower gun violence. And this is organized, from the best I can tell, organized from African Americans, organized by African Americans. That's mainly who you see there, which counters the narrative that we don't protest against gun violence in our own community. Because what a lot of people on the right wing, what Fox News, the Fox News network, when we talk about holding police officers accountable and police brutality, then they say, well, why don't you protest black on black crime? I would ask them, why don't you protest white on white crime? Because 83% of white people who are killed each year are killed by other white people. There's white on white crime, but you don't want to really talk about that. Why don't you protest that? But African Americans are protesting against gun violence in the community committed by other African Americans. Mainstream media, especially the Fox News Network, does not want to cover it when we protest. So then they can lie to their viewers and say, we're not doing anything about it, we don't protest. Here they're coming out protesting, and they're calling for the resignation of the mayor and the police superintendent as well, okay? Now, a San Diego Padres Chicago Cubs game is scheduled on Thursday, August 2nd, 2018, today, Thursday evening, and it's the first day of the Lollapalooza music festival in Grant Park. So they're bringing maximum exposure. They're bringing maximum exposure. A lot of people have been watching the Facebook Live broadcast from WGN. ABC 7 Chicago is broadcasting as well. So this is going to go viral. Even though they may not talk about it on MSNBC right now, they'll probably be talking about it tonight and for the next few days as well. And then on the Sunday shows like AM Joy, Joanne Reed, Politics Nation, Reverend Al Sharpton, both on MSNBC. You'll probably see articles written from AtlantaBlackStar.com and The Root and News1.com, The Griot, YoBlackWorld.net. I'm a contributor for YoBlackWorld.net, so I'm gonna make sure they cover this. Okay, so there's also a Chicago White Sox game at guaranteed rate field that's going on today as well. All right, so they're getting maximum exposure from this. Now, organizers say they believe the march in the affluent neighborhood will draw attention to violence, corruption, and the lack of economic investment in the city's African-American neighborhoods, okay? There's rampant segregation that takes place in Chicago, and you have segregation of opportunity. You have segregation of opportunity taking place in Chicago. There was a big study, I know on News One Now with Roland Martin. There was a big study done in Chicago dealing with segregation, but it was dealing with the segregation of opportunity. Okay, the segregation of the opportunity. There was a clip from News One Now. Segregation costs African Americans billions every year in Chicago. Segregation costs African Americans billions every year in Chicago. That is on YouTube. Okay, that's the name of the segment from News One Now with Roland Martin. Check that out. Segregation costs African Americans billions every year in Chicago. Okay, so check that out. And there was a study that I read. I'll try to pull up that study. But they talk about the study in this video clip, okay? So people around the country can get an idea of what's going on in Chicago and why people are protesting, all right? Okay, so let's post this here on the thread of the broadcast. All right, so we got that. Okay, let's continue here. Let's continue here. Okay, so organizers say they believe the march in the affluent neighborhood will draw attention to violence, corruption, and the lack of economic investment in the city's African-American neighborhoods. Because what's happening is, because of the segregation of opportunity, because of the segregation of investment in the African-American community, taxpayer dollars are being extracted out of the African-American community, but not being redistributed to the community. They're being redistributed into the white community in Chicago. Okay, so for people who talk about, you know, I remember on News One Now, probably in that clip, you see from News One Now, when they talked about this study, you'll see Ralph, I think his last name is Cheatham's. Okay, he's this black Republican, this ignorant, brainwashed guy. And so he talked about Black Wall Street and how we were successful under segregation and things like that. Most African-American communities were not like Black Wall Street, number one. Number two, we're talking about segregation of opportunity. We're talking about taxpayer dollars being extracted out of the African-American community and being redirected into the white community and not coming back into the African-American community. So don't talk about prosperous African Americans doing segregation, because those same people don't want to talk about the racial terror that was inflicted upon African Americans during those same period of time, during the early 1900s, 1910s, 1920s, okay? And this racial terror was inflicted to enforce the Jim Crow laws, to enforce segregation. All right, 1919 was known as the Red Summer. This was the year after World War I ended. You had over 25 major race riots in this country because when these white men went away to World War I, they had jobs. We know that the 1915 basically starts the Great Migration. From 1915 to about 1970, 5 million to 6 million African Americans leave the South, go up north, go out west. They're going to work in factories. They're going to work in auto plants. Why? Because you had about 5 million men, most of them white, during World War I. They went to go fight in the war. When they left jobs behind. This created a labor vacuum. So you have these corporations, these railroad companies, these factories, marketing to African Americans in the South, luring them up north to come fill this labor vacuum. And then also you have immigrants coming to this country as well, who are filling this labor vacuum. And African Americans migrate from the South up north and they go out west. And as they go into these northern cities, you're going to have increases in racial tensions. Okay, and you're going to have race riots that take place in these northern cities, like in Detroit in 1943. 1943 was the big race riot. Okay, we had one in 1967 in Detroit, but you had one in 1943 during World War II as well. Okay, 1919, when these white men come back, when they come back from the war, okay, now they don't have jobs, but they have skills in how to fight and how to kill. They brought back military weapons with them. They brought back Browning machine guns, things like this. and they're using them on the streets of this country. You have over 25 major race riots. James Weldon Johnson, who wrote the poem that became known as Lift Every Voice and Sing, he called it the Red Summer because the streets of America were flowing with blood. Blackpast.org. Blackpast.org has an article dealing with the history of the Red Summer. Okay, so we have to understand this history here, and a people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. A people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. All right, how's everybody doing today? You're just tuning in. This is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. We're talking about the protests going on in Chicago right now, shutting down Lakeshore Drive. African Americans are protesting, calling for the resignation of Mayor Rahm Emmanuel and the resignation of Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson, who is African American. He does not get a pass, okay? And they're citing a lack of reduction in gun violence in the community, the closing of public schools, and other things as well, all right? And my thing is we're going to talk about the economic empowerment and redistribute the pain here in just a minute. But in addition to these protests, they have to show up and vote him out of office, because the primaries are going on now. They have to show up, because they didn't show up back in about 2014, okay, when they had the last mayoral election. I covered it. I was reporting on it for the Michael Imhotep show, and when I used to guest host Roland Martin's national radio show, the Roland Martin show. And you had 700,000 African Americans registered to vote in Chicago. 700,000 African Americans registered to vote in Chicago. Only 150,000 showed up in the primary. They had the votes to vote Mayor Rahm Emmanuel out of office, and they didn't do it. So then after he becomes reelected, then you have they released the LaQuan McDonald tape. All hell breaks loose, all these protests in the streets, calling for him to resign, and he said, I'm not resigning, and he's still there today. You got to vote him out of office. Election day is your opportunity to fire these people. It's your opportunity to fire these people and redistribute the pain of them to those people who've been inflicting pain upon you as well, okay? All right. So share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. If you like this type of information, many of you know I teach online courses. They're all on demand. We deal with history, including understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We have a 10-course online bundle pack on sale for $60. We posted the link here. It's all on demand. Watch at your own pace. It's also available at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com as well, okay? We'll come to some of your comments here in just a minute. But I wanted to come on here and talk about this breaking news story here, because there's a lot going on. You have protests taking place this weekend in Florida behind the Stand Your Ground killing of Marquise McLaughlin. Okay, I know National Action Network and other groups, they're going to be down there protesting, drawing attention to that, calling for the arrest and prosecution of the man who shot and killed the white man who basically instigated it, took it upon himself to be a police enforcement officer, determine whether or not people have the right to park in their handicapped parking space. Okay, that this guy ends up shooting and killing Marquise McLaughlin. And his family supporters are saying, well, wait a second, he had a right to stand his ground and protect his family. Okay, this is the other guy. He's the one who instigated this. All right, and then he wants to claim he feared for his life, and Marquise McLaughlin was unarmed. All right, so I know they're going to be down in Florida this weekend protesting behind that as well. Okay, so let's go back to this article here. Organizers say they believe the march in the affluent neighborhood, Lakeshore Drive, will draw attention to violence, corruption, and the lack of economic investment in the city's African-American neighborhoods. The demonstration comes almost a month after anti-violence protesters shut down traffic on a Chicago interstate highway as well, okay? So let's see. Okay, so we'll post this article here. They have a lot of social media posts from down on the ground, what's going on. This is WGN TV, Channel 9. So we'll post a link of this article so you can check it out and read the social media posts also. All right, so let's go to this. Okay, let's go to that. So, so let me show you. Let me show you this quickly. So, what has to happen is that people have to leverage their economics to enforce their political agenda. Getting Mayor Rahm Emmanuel out of office, getting Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson out of office, and usually in most of these municipalities, the mayor is the one who appoints the police superintendent or the police chief, right? So we have to understand how politics impacts every aspect of our life, from the water we drink, Flint, Michigan, to the air we breathe. Look at what Trump is doing with the EPA and the rolling back of EPA regulations, rolling back of President Obama era regulations coming to the environment, okay? The water you drink, the air you breathe, the food you eat, all regulated by law. Politics, okay? Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement, okay? This is what politics is. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement, all right? Most of our people really don't understand what politics is, and this is one of the main reasons why we're losing. If you look at what's taking place with Donald Trump, you're looking at what's taking place, the exposure of more exposure of his links to Russia. We see during the campaign 82 contacts with Russia that are basically unexplained. We saw a couple weeks ago, we saw the article from the New York Times that talked about how Donald Trump, January 6, 2017, he was shown overwhelming evidence that Vladimir Putin ordered the cyber attacks on the 2016 election. The article from the New York Times, I covered this on my radio show, the African History Network show, July 22nd, 2018, and we dealt with the topic, is Donald Trump a traitor? From the start, Trump has muddied a clear message, Putin interfered. From the start, Trump has muddied a clear message, Putin interfered. That's July 18th, 2018. 2 weeks before the inauguration, Donald J. Trump was shown highly classified intelligence indicating that President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia had personally ordered complex cyber attacks to sway the 2016 American election. The evidence included text messages, and emails from Russian military officers, and information gleaned or gathered from a top secret source close to Vladimir Putin, who had described to the CIA how the Kremlin decided to execute its campaign of hacking and disinformation. Donald Trump sounded grudgingly convinced, according to several people who attended the intelligence briefing, but ever since then, Donald Trump has tried to cloud the very findings that he received on January 6, 2017, which his own intelligence leaders have unanimously endorsed. This was 2 weeks before the January 20th, 2017 inauguration. Trump knew without a doubt who was behind this, that Vladimir Putin ordered this. They showed him overwhelming evidence. And in that briefing, he was briefed by FBI Director James Comey. He was briefed by then CIA Director John Brennan. He was briefed by Director of National Intelligence at the time, James Clapper Jr. These were the people there in the meeting. So Trump has known this since January 6, 2017, and he keeps playing stupid. Donald Trump is the Manchurian candidate. I told you all this during the 2016 election. I told you that Donald Trump is the Manchurian candidate, okay? And this is the evidence here. All right. If you like this type of information, you can also donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show. If you donate to the African History Network, that helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting as well. Paypal.me/the AHN show, or go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can donate there. And then also you can advertise with the African History Network on the podcast of our radio show. We put your 60-second commercial into our audio podcast. We're on 6 different podcast platforms. Special promotion, buy 1 month, get 1 month free. You can market your African-American-owned business. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com for more information. Customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com for more information. All right, so let's deal with how does economic empowerment connect with a political agenda? Okay, because this is the mistake that a lot of us make. We don't understand the connection. All right. And some of you have seen some of my interviews with Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Claude Anderson is one of my teachers. And he talked about how he's not against voting. People misunderstand Dr. Claude Anderson. He's not saying don't vote and build an economic base. He's saying leverage your economics to enforce your vote. And if you go watch the interview I did with him February 19th, 2018, which was President's Day, we have it on YouTube, our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. We have it on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, and it's an audio podcast, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's on our different podcast platforms. We go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. February 19th, 2018, we dealt with DACA and Black Americans, okay? Where we talked about voting and leveraging your economics to enforce your vote. So when I teach, I talk about the principles of economic guerrilla warfare, right? And the three main principles of economic guerrilla warfare are redistribute, redirect, and renegotiate. Redistribute, redirect, or renegotiate. Redistribute the pain to those inflicting pain upon us through targeted, sustained economic withdrawal strategies. Redirect dollars to African-American-owned businesses so we can become the #1 employers of our own people, just like every other ethnic group in this country. And renegotiate our relationship with corporate America, where we leverage the dollars we spend with corporate America to get reinvestments in the form of vendor contracts with them, in the form of contracts with advertising agencies. We get an increase in the amount of advertising dollars that are spent with African-American media, radio stations, TV networks like TV One and Aspire, Bounce TV, which is broadcast television, African-American owned and operated as well. So we have to leverage our economics in these three areas, okay? So if we break this down, now the term redistribute the pain, that comes from Dr. King, April 3rd, 1968, his last speech called I've Been to the Mountaintop. And when I do lectures, I have a actual lecture that I've done on Dr. King. It's called The Distortion of the Legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Revolutionary Will Not Be Televised on the Television. The distortion of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Revolutionary, will not be televised on the television, okay? And so I deal with the Revolutionary Dr. King. So a lot of people have heard excerpts of Dr. King's last speech, I've Been to the Mountaintop. We know every Dr. King Day, they show us the last 2 minutes or 3 minutes of his speech, where he talks about getting to the mountaintop. And, he said, I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. The speech is about 43 minutes. He deals with economic empowerment in the speech. In this speech, he also says that we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. We have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. This is what he said April 3rd, 1968, the day before he was assassinated. Now, Dr. King did not just start, contrary to popular belief. I hear a lot of people who haven't studied Dr. King who say, oh, when he started talking about economics, they killed him. Dr. King was talking about economics long before this. Even August 28th, 1963, in a speech that has been renamed, I Have a Dream, when he delivered that speech at the Lincoln Memorial, he was talking about economics there, because that speech was originally called a canceled check. It was not called I Have a Dream. He was talking about holding America accountable for a promissory note that was given to us 100 years prior in 1863 with the Emancipation Proclamation. And he said when we went to go deposit that check at the bank, it was marked insufficient funds. And he was talking about holding America accountable for a promise given to us 100 years prior. He was talking about economics. That speech was called a canceled check. And he was talking about fighting against white supremacy and racism, police brutality, voter suppression, all of that he deals with in the speech. So you actually have to read the text of the speech as opposed to listening to it. Go to loc.gov. loc.gov is the Library of Congress website. loc.gov, that's the Library of Congress website. Go to loc.gov and search for I Have a Dream. Or you can go to archives.gov, and search for I Have a Dream. I have the text of the speech printed out, and actually I may even have the link bookmarked. I may be able to make it easy for you, because I think I have the link to the speech bookmarked. And you have to actually read the text of the speech. If you read the text of his speech that's been renamed I Have a Dream, you get an entirely different impression of the speech. Okay, yeah, I have it right here. Here we go. This is from archives.gov. I have thousands of articles and things like that. Okay, let's see, where is this? This is blocking it. I can't see. Okay, here we go. Let me post it right here. I'll post this link for you, but this one is from archives.gov. All right, the speech was not about black children holding hands with white children. That's not what the speech was about, okay? All right, but let's go back to this here. Okay, so Dr. King said we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. So what this means is when we have mass protests, like the one that took place in Chicago, that's taking place in Chicago right now, when you have mass protests, you also have to have targeted, sustained economic withdrawal strategies to put pressure on your opponent so you can push your political agenda. This is the mistake that many of us make. I don't know if they have economic boycotts involved in this. I ain't see anything. I didn't hear about them talking about this. When you have mass protests like this, right, you got to have people there passing out flyers, talking about targeting certain major corporations in that city to withdraw economic support from. And then you talk about, you let them know which African-American owned businesses as a substitute to redirect dollars to. But we have to talk about withdrawing economic support, targeted sustained economic withdrawal. You target those 3 or 4 corporations or 5. You withdraw economic support from those major white-owned banks in the downtown area. And you list the names of African-American owned banks and credit unions to redirect your dollars to. If there are no African-American owned banks there in that city, list the name of credit unions. It could be a white-owned credit union to redirect dollars to, because when you go to get a homeowner's loan, a loan to buy a mortgage, to buy a car, you'll get a better interest rate from that credit union than you will from the bank. And the other thing is, when you have these targeted economic withdrawal strategies that are implemented against these major chain stores, these national chains, you always take your economic boycott, your economic protests, you take it national. So you link up with other people in other cities and you encourage them to withdraw economic support from these same businesses in Detroit, Gary, Indiana, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, things like this, because they're probably going through the same issues. And if they're not, this is on its way, okay? What's an example of this? A real life example of this was 1960, the economic boycott of the downtown business district in Nashville, Tennessee in spring of 1960. It was the Easter boycott. And this was around fighting to end segregation in the city of Nashville, Tennessee. And they had economic boycotts of the downtown business district because African Americans were discriminated against, largely getting service in the downtown business district, not being able to eat at lunch counters, being discriminated against in clothing stores, things like this, but also discriminated against when it came to employment, okay? So what they had was, They had an economic boycott of the downtown business district. So at that time, African Americans, if I remember correctly, they spent about $50 million a year. I think it was about $50 million a year in the downtown business district. And Eyes on the Prize, episode number 3, Ain't Scared of Your Jails, 1960, 1961. They talk about this, okay? Watch Eyes on the Prize. You may be able to find it on YouTube. I ordered the set from Amazon for about $25, and they talk about this. There, and they had lunch counter sit-ins, but they had an economic boycott. African Americans had an economic boycott, and they were boycotting these chain stores like the Kresge's and the Woolworths and things like this. What happened was African Americans in the North who could go to these stores and get full service, they started boycotting these stores also. These boycotts spread to about 59 cities across the country. This is before the internet, before YouTube, before Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, before text messages, before cell phones. You had these economic boycotts spread, and African Americans in the North, to be in solidarity with their brothers and sisters in the South dealing with Jim Crow segregation, they were boycotting these same chain stores in the North that we were boycotting in the South. So when you have, this is a real life historical example. I'm not talking about theory, I'm talking about history. I can document what I'm talking about. I can show you historically how we fought back against white supremacy and racism. I can show you numerous examples. I have an entire lecture that I do called Redistributing the Pain, how African Americans historically fought back with economic boycotts. Redistributing the Pain, how African Americans historically fought back with economic boycotts. I have it on DVD at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, okay? So what Dr. King is talking about is not something we should do, it's something we have done. He's not talking about theory. He's talking about what we have done. Unfortunately, many of us are suffering from historical amnesia. Unfortunately, many of our people are suffering from historical amnesia, and we don't understand a history of us fighting back. And one of the reasons why many of us don't fight back is, one, we don't understand the history of us fighting back, and two, because we've been so psychologically assassinated, many of us don't think we're worth fighting for. So we finance our own dehumanization. We finance negative corporate hip hop that depicts us as being subhuman, that criminalizes us. Okay? You can't keep calling yourself an N-word and call your woman a B and a thought and all this stuff and be bombarded with negative corporate hip hop on a daily basis and think that you're going to have a positive image of yourself, but also think that other people are going to honor and respect your humanity. That's not going to happen. That's a contradiction. And African Americans are the only people in this country who tolerate something like that. And the reason why is because for the most part, our history and culture have been taken away from us. We've been taught to see reality through the eyes of Europeans. And your history and culture gives you your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. Your values, your interests, and your principles, and influences your economic empowerment and influences your political empowerment. And as Stephen Biko, one of our great South African freedom fighters, said, Bantu Stephen Biko, he said, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So we have to take our minds back. And what these brothers and sisters were doing today in Chicago, they're fighting to take their minds back. Okay, but they have to leverage their economics to enforce their political agenda. They have to leverage their economics to enforce their political agenda. All right, so Dr. King talked about in his speech, he talked about redistributing the pain. Okay, he said up until now, April 3rd, 1968, he said up until now, only the sanitation workers have been feeling the pain. He said we've got to kind of find a way to redistribute the pain. All right, and let's bring this back up here. Let's bring this slide back up. Okay, he said we got to kind of find a way to redistribute the pain. So this is April of 1963. The Memphis, Tennessee sanitation workers strike is going on. They're fighting for better work conditions and equal pay, things like this, right? And Dr. King tells him, he says, first of all, he says, He said the Negro has an annual income of $30 billion. Okay. He said that's a lot of money if you know how to use it, if you know how to pull it. Okay. He said that makes us, he said, we were a country that makes us about the 9th or 10th richest country in the world. Okay. He says, I call upon you to go out and tell your friends here in Memphis to boycott Coca-Cola, Wonder Bread, Heart's Bread, and Seal-Test milk because of their discriminatory hiring practices. He says we have to strengthen Black institutions. He says take your money out of the banks downtown and put your money in Tri-State Bank. This is what he told them. This is in the speech. He said we got to strengthen Black institutions. He said, I call upon you to take your money out of the banks downtown and put your money in Tri-State Bank. Now, Tri-State Bank was an African-American owned bank at the time in Memphis, Tennessee. He said, you have 6 or 7 Black insurance companies here in Memphis, Tennessee. He said, take out your insurance policies there. Okay. So what he's talking about is redistributing the pain through targeted, sustained economic withdrawal strategies. You're using the mass protest to galvanize support around your issue, to inform people about your issue, to draw people into your plan, okay? And you're using economic withdrawal strategies to push and enforce your political agenda. Okay, he said we don't have to. He said we don't have to go around and call people bad names and cuss people out and things like this. He said we don't have to throw Molotov cocktails. He said all we have to do is go to these businesses and massive industries and tell them that God sent us by here to tell you that you're not treating His children correctly. And he said we want you to make the first item on your agenda fair treatment where God's children are concerned. Now, if you're not prepared to make fair treatment of God's children the first item on your agenda, he said, then we have an agenda that we must follow, and our agenda requires us to withdraw economic support from you. This is what he said in his speech. I wrote an article, a 7-page article called Why Did Dr. King Tell Us to Redistribute the Pain? Understanding the Power of Economic Withdrawal, okay? And I have the video of his last speech in there. You can go research this yourself. This is documented. This is what Dr. King told them. He's talking about redistributing the pain, but you cannot try to achieve acceptance from white supremacy and fight against white supremacy at the same time. See, this is why the history and culture is so important. This is why history and culture gives us our foundation. You can't see reality through the eyes of Europeans and try to fight against white supremacy and Europeans at the same time. We have to operate from an African cultural historical paradigm, okay? So when we look at this right here, this is the pyramid principle. Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Small, 2 of my teachers, when they teach, they talk about the pyramid principle. This is the pyramid of Khafre at Giza in Egypt, okay? What used to be called Kemet, K-E-M-E-T. Means land of the blacks. That's one of the original names for Egypt. You also see Ta-Meri. Ta-Meri means the beloved land. So the foundation is African history and culture. It gives us our values, our interests, and our principles. It influences our economic empowerment and influences our political empowerment. Now, contrary to popular belief, and this is something that conversation I had with Dr. Boyce Watkins, and he agreed with me on this. Boyce is a friend of mine. You see him broadcast here on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Boyce totally agreed with me on this, right? So, and take his stock market class and sign up for the Black Business School. I've done presentation. I've spoken to Black Business School before as well. But my degree is in business administration with a major in marketing. I've taught entrepreneurship for a number of years. I've been studying for 26 years, studying history, culture, African history, things like this, economic empowerment, et cetera. But one of the things I talk about so people have a clear understanding is that wealth creation and economic empowerment are not the same thing. So we have to be clear on what it is we're trying to do. Okay. Now I'm all for both. I'm all for wealth creation and economic empowerment, but they're not the same thing. So you have to be clear on what it is that you're trying to do. So wealth is your assets minus liabilities. That's what wealth is. Okay. We can all have stock portfolios valued at $1 million. And we could still be spending 97% of our dollars with people that don't look like us. You have wealth creation, you don't have economic empowerment. Economic empowerment deals with when you can control and own the majority of the land in your community. You own those multi-story buildings in the downtown business district. You own the parking lots. You own the radio stations and gas stations and TV stations and grocery stores, dry cleaners, newspapers. You control the media, okay, in your community. You control your politics, your police force. This is economic empowerment. Economic empowerment just doesn't mean owning businesses, because you have to control the politics, because the politics regulates and controls the businesses. This is what people don't understand. Businesses are controlled by regulation. Businesses are controlled by ordinances. Every city most likely has a zoning board, which impacts businesses and where certain businesses could be, how far they have to be from a school, what's the earliest bars and clubs can open, how late can they stay open. And then you need a liquor license. Well, usually the liquor license comes from the state. All this deals with regulation. So politics regulates and impacts business. A couple months ago, within the last couple of months, U.S. Supreme Court just ruled that e-commerce stores, online businesses, have to charge state tax. That came down from the U.S. Supreme Court within the last couple of months. That impacts business. So the people who think that all we need is economic empowerment and we don't need to deal with politics, you just proven you don't understand economic empowerment and you don't understand politics, because you have to have a synthesis of them. This is what Dr. Linda Jeffries and Professor James Small teaches, and they're absolutely correct. You have to have a synthesis of them, okay? So politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. The legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. The writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. And these slides right here, this is from a presentation that I've just done in the last couple months. This is called Lessons from the Film Black Panther. Lessons from the Film Black Panther. Economic guerrilla warfare, political self-defense, and how to Wakanda the vote. These slides is from that presentation. I have 4 presentations I've done dealing with the film Black Panther. This is one. I'm also done a presentation on the film Black Panther for children, a Black Panther analysis for children. But this deals with what we can learn from the film Black Panther. And these are some of the things I'll talk about August 10th through the 12th when I'm in San Diego for Return of the Gods. San Diego, I'm there, Return of the Gods, there with Professor Kaba, Kamene, and Sarak, the MC, and Queen Afua. Visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com for more information. This presentation here is on DVD at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. We also have a bundle pack. We have a 6 DVD bundle pack, 6 DVD Black Panther bundle pack. I'll post a link for that. But it's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. This is the one I did for children, a Black Panther analysis for children, African culture, history, and Afrofuturism. Okay, I was presenting to 5th through 12th graders at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History on May 29th. So all these presentations are at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, okay? All right, so politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Okay, so we have the broadcast of the protest on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, okay? And then also it was coming from WGN Channel 9 in Chicago. I think the protest is over, but you can still watch it. There was an article from WGN that had the links, had the Facebook Live broadcast inside the article as well. We'll post that link again here on the thread, okay? So we just posted it. So when you get finished watching this, you can watch that, all right? Okay. But it's important for people to understand this because a lot of our people don't understand the connection between economics, the connection, the relationship between economics and politics, okay? It's not an either or, it's a both and. An example of politics impacting every aspect of your life, that $1.4 trillion tax cut that Republicans gave to the top 1%, 83% goes to the top 1%, okay? And now what they're trying to do, they're proposing $2 billion in cuts, $2 trillion in cuts, $2 trillion in cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security to make up for this $1.4 trillion tax cut that they said would be so good for the working class, which was a lie. It was a lie. Okay? Only about 3.7% of the 161 million workers, only about 3.7%, as reported by MSNBC, Stephanie Rule and Ali Velshi on MSNBC, only 3.7% have gone to the workers. Okay, out of 161 million workers in the labor force, only 3.7% have received bonuses or increases in pay. Okay, it's an absolute joke. But this is stuff I warn people about. I warn people what would happen if Donald Trump became president. Back during the 2016 election, I predicted this would happen. Okay, because if you study Paul Ryan, you know Paul Ryan for years has wanted to gut the social safety net. He has an opportunity to do this. And the Hill.com, we posted the article on my personal page, Michael Imhotep, and I think I put it here on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. The Hill.com just had an article. I think this was yesterday. Tax breaks for wealthy paid for with deep cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Quote, in their proposed budget, Republicans in Congress are now wanting to pay for those special interest tax breaks by taking that same $2 trillion out of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the Affordable Health Care Act. They're trying to gut the social safety net. They're trying to kill the Affordable Health Care Act. I warned people this was coming if Donald Trump became president, and people wanted to sit up here and act stupid and talk about, oh, what can you do the day after election? You can't do before the election. People just wanted to act stupid and not understand how politics impacts every aspect of your life. I warned people this stuff was coming. This is why midterm elections, November 6, 2018, are so important. We can't play games. If this tax cut, if this $2 trillion tax cut goes through, you're gonna see a huge increase in violence all throughout the African American community and the white community. The white community is being ravaged by opioid addiction now. There's violence attached to this. Now, it is true that overall, nationwide, violent crimes and murders are at about a 40-year low. There's been an uptick the past couple of years, but it's still relatively low. If this goes through, you're gonna see it increase. It's gonna cause more strife in the streets. Absolutely. Okay, let's continue here. And then, so that's politics. What's culture? Okay. Culture deals with your traditions, your spiritual systems, your art, music, dance, folklore, mythology, cosmology, language, educational system, etc. Culture acts as an immune system, as Dr. Marimba Ani teaches us, which keeps foreign elements from coming in and attacking you. Culture is the glue or cohesiveness that binds a people together and tells them the only way that they will survive is through self-reliance. This is what culture is. All right. And then when we understand economic, when we understand how to leverage our economics to enforce our political agenda. Let's see here. Let me give you a couple of examples of that. Let's see. Do I have it here? I think I have it here. Okay. So one example is dealing with why Bill O'Reilly is not on the air right now. Okay, this was a really good article from Huffington Post Black Voices. This is a documented case of us leveraging our economics to push our political agenda. All right, colorchange.org was at the forefront of getting Bill O'Reilly off the air. Color Change and other organizations put pressure on 80 advertisers to withdraw advertising dollars from Bill O'Reilly's show, The O'Reilly Factor, on Fox News. If you read this is why Bill O'Reilly's not on the air right now. 80 advertisers withdrew economic support from Bill O'Reilly's show. His show was no longer profitable, so Fox News let him go. This is why he's not on the air now. Okay, we redistributed the pain through targeted sustain, through the threat of economic withdrawal. Okay, these organizations, they leverage the dollars that we spend with these various corporations, And this came after. Now, first of all, Color of Change had a they had a 2-year campaign against Bill O'Reilly's show. What caused things to accelerate was one, New York Times revealed that Bill O'Reilly and Fox News paid $13 million to 5 women who had sexual harassment lawsuits against Bill O'Reilly. 2, Bill O'Reilly made some very derogatory comments about Representative Maxine Waters. When you make these comments about Maxine Waters, things blew up, okay? And you had also Color Change. They got about 325,000 signatures on an online petition to have his show removed, okay? But this is an example of us leveraging our dollars to push a political agenda, all right? And he had a history of saying very negative things about African Americans, attacking the Black Lives Matter movement, attacking African Americans who were protesting, or attacking Colin Kaepernick, attacking those protesting to hold police officers accountable, etc. Okay, all right. Okay, so check out that article from Huffington Post, Black Voices, and also Color of Change. They were at the forefront of getting Glenn Beck's show off the air. I think he was on Fox News as well, and also getting the TV show Cops off the air as well after 25 years. Color Change created a petition that received 340,000 signatures over the course of the campaign and launched a 1-800 hotline phone number to encourage other women who have experienced sexual harassment at Fox News to come forward. Okay. They also created geo-targeted geared towards current and prospective Fox employees to ensure they were knowledgeable of the network's disreputable culture. All right, so check out the rest of that article. So then you have another example of us leveraging our dollars is what happened in New York City with the city employees and their pension fund dollars, okay? So June of 2017, you had New York City employees, the city employees of the city of New York, withdrew $48 million in pension fund dollars from 3 privatized prisons. $48 million in pension fund dollars from 3 privatized prisons. Geo Group, which used to be Wackenhut, Core Civic, which used to be Corrections Corporation of America, and G4S. So these are 3 of the top largest owner-operators of privatized prisons, all right? And in the article, it says, morally, the industry wants to turn back the clock on years of progress on criminal justice, and we can't sit idly by and watch that happen. Divesting is simply the right thing to do financially and morally. So a lot of people don't know that they are invested in privatized prisons and gun manufacturers through their pension fund dollars and their 401k dollars. A lot of people are invested in these 2 industries and don't know it. A lot of us are financing our own dehumanization. I'm not telling you get rid of your pension funds. I'm not telling you get rid of your 401k plan, but you can contact your benefits manager and you can find out the industries and the companies that you are invested in, and you can divest from those. The other thing that's important, and Reverend Al Sharpton talks about this, and this is one of the things that came out of their action plan, their national convention. He talks about this on the radio shows, on his radio show, Keeping It Real. He talks about how there also needs to be an increase in the percentage of African-American financial managers that are handling our pension fund dollars and our 401k dollars. And this is something a lot of people don't think about. Okay, he talked about how he was speaking to it was an African-American union, I forgot which one, or the union was predominantly African-American, something like 80%. And they had like about 114 financial managers that handled their money, invested their money, pension fund, 401k, whatever it was. And only one was African-American. And he's telling them, he said, wait a second, this is your money. You can determine that you want more African-Americans handling your money, okay? See, this is something like real that a lot of us don't think about, All right, so read this article here, NYC pension fund to back out of investments in private prisons. And this is something they actually did. I follow this story. This is something they actually did. And on his TV show, Politics Nation on MSNBC, he interviewed someone involved in this after it took place. This is something that actually happened. So this is not theory. This is history. Okay. Let's see. So then also you have people divesting from gun manufacturers. So New York Times had an article from July 14th, 2016. New York City pension fund to divest itself of gun retailer stock. New York City pension fund to divest itself from gun retailer stock. All right. Check that one out also. That is from the New York Times. In 2014, in late 2014, because see, a lot of people say, well, we need to build an economic base. We need to build an economic base. Dr. Claude Anderson talks about this. Dr. Claude Anderson is one of my teachers, right? I argue we already have an economic base. We need to grow it, but we already have an economic base. Our economic base is not just the businesses we own. That's a mistake. It's the businesses we own. It's where we invest our dollars, our pension fund and our 401k dollars. It's where we invest our dollars. It's also the corporations we spend dollars with. And being able to leverage the dollars we spend with corporations to push them to enforce political agendas. Just like we leveraged our dollars we spend with corporations to get 80 advertisers to withdraw economic support from Bill O'Reilly's show, because he was attacking African Americans, he was attacking Representative Maxine Waters, okay? And we have to better understand how to weaponize our dollars and redistribute the pain economically to those inflicting pain upon us, all right? But also, it deals with the TV shows that you watch as well, extremely important. So a lot of us don't make the connection between leveraging our dollars, okay, and putting pressure on advertisers and targeting TV shows that put out, project a negative depiction of African Americans. So a perfect example of that was the reality TV show Sorority Sisters on VH1, okay? And in late 2014, you had, so this TV show had African-American women from different African-American sororities, I think AKA, Delta Sigma Theta, things like this, and Sigma Gamma Rho. And the backlash came from a lot of African-American sororities, and they were saying this TV show and these women negatively depict us, right? So what did they do? They organized and they put economic pressure on 19 advertisers, 19 corporations, 19 advertisers. These advertisers withdrew economic support from this TV show. They withdrew their advertising dollars. That TV show was put on the shelf, and you haven't heard anything else about it since then. That was in 2014. They redistributed the pain, okay? But you have to have a positive self-image of yourself to understand the need to fight back, to understand that there is a disconnect between the stereotypical images that are projected of you and reality. But if you think that you are an N-word, right, then you will agree with the negative, derogatory, ratchet, okay, images projected of us. You won't see anything wrong with it. Okay, this is why Bantu Stephen Biko, one of our great South African freedom fighters, this is why he said the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So we have to take our minds back, okay? And see a people's history and culture. See, your history and culture is not supposed to be escapism. Too many of us are using African history and culture as escapism. And we're trying to stay high on psilocybin mushrooms and marijuana, okay, and metaphysically transport ourselves back to 3000 BC in ancient Kemet, because we don't want to deal with the problems of today. We don't want to plan for tomorrow and lay out strategies to deal with the problems for today. So either one, everything is a conspiracy, So you explain everything as a conspiracy so you don't have to fight against it. But the people who traffic in the conspiracy theories, notice they can never tell you what to do to fight against the conspiracy, to defeat the conspiracy usually. Everything is a conspiracy. So, well, Trayvon Martin wasn't really killed there where he was killed. He was killed somewhere else, and they dragged his body there. So therefore, there's no need to protest. There's no need to fight against it because it's a conspiracy. Oh, well, Michael Brown, see that video that they showed, that was from 3 months before. He wasn't really there in that store that day. He was there 3 months before. It's all a conspiracy. Therefore, there's no need to vote these people out of office who are controlling the city of Ferguson, Missouri, 67% black. There's no need to fight against this because it's just a conspiracy. But notice the people who traffic in the conspiracy theories, 99 times out of 100, they can't tell you what to do to fight against the conspiracy. Pay attention to that. And what it is they can't provide any solutions usually. So to make themselves relevant, they have to then try to explain away issues and incidences that will cause a logical person to say, we need to fight against this. So usually they're not telling you strategies how to fight against these things happening. They're just trying to explain them away with a conspiracy to then convince you there's no need to fight against them. And see, this is how a lot of irrelevant people are trying to stay relevant. Okay, I'm not attacking anybody. I'm trying to explain this to you because I see the game. This is how a lot of irrelevant people are trying to stay relevant. All right. So let's see here. How's everybody doing? Okay, let me show you this. So this is New York City. This is the pension fund dollars, right? Now, this is a real life. This is not theory. This is not something they had to study for 15 years. Wait till Mercury's in retrograde. Wait till Mercury comes out of retrograde, okay? Wait till all the stars line up and all this stuff. No. They said, you may have privatized prisons, but you're not going to do it with our money. We're going to withdraw economic support from you. New York City employees divest pension fund dollars from privatized prisons. New York City's pension system has become the first in the nation to fully divest from private prisons. Controller Scott Stringer will announce on Thursday. They did announce this. This is past. It's already happened. The city has sold off about $48 million in stocks and bonds of 3 private prisons, according to the controller's office, after a unanimous vote from the fund's trustees. Okay, now, here's what's important to understand, right? Donald Trump reversed President Obama's August 2016 initiative dealing with privatized prisons. August of 2016, President Obama announced that the federal government would not renew contracts for privatized prisons for housing federal prisoners. When they announced that, the stock price of Geo Group and Core Civic took a big hit. Donald Trump has reversed this. Donald Trump, March of 2016, during the campaign, he said that he was interviewed by Chris Matthews on MSNBC, and he said that privatized prisons seem to work very well, and they seem to save a lot of money. That's not true on either one. That's not true in either case, okay? But what Trump didn't tell you is that Core Civic and Geo Group, 2 of the largest owner-operators of privatized prisons in the country, they donated almost $600,000 to his presidential campaign. They donated almost $600,000 to his presidential campaign. And see, one of the biggest problems is, what I was trying to explain to people during the 2016 election, is that the election was not about 2 people. It was not Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. This is the biggest mistake people made. It's about policies. It's about their policies and the trajectory of the country. And a lot of President Obama's policies were on the ballot, but people didn't know this. And they have been reversed. There have been over 100 Obama-era policy reversals under Trump. Trump is trying to totally destroy President Obama's legacy. But most of our people don't understand what happened, don't understand these policies. So this is why if you follow the articles that we post here on our fan page, the African History Network, I know we post a lot about Trump. The reason why is because politics impacts every aspect of your life. If you pay attention to these articles I post, you see how dire this is. You see why it's important to vote these Republicans out of office midterm elections, November 6, 2018, because I'm showing you what's taking place, okay? And they're doing this right in our face. It's not covert. They're doing this right now. They're doing this right in our face. But people need to read Progress of the African-American Community, Progress of the African-American Community under the Obama administration. 99% of the people who say Obama didn't do this, Obama didn't do that, haven't read this. I listen to what people say, and they provide absolutely no evidence. They're done with theory. I'm a researcher. I deal with facts and evidence, not feelings and emotions. I'm a researcher. I can document what I'm talking about. All right, so let me post this here on the thread of the broadcast, because proper documentation ends all conversation. Okay, so people need to read this. This is from whitehouse.gov. What's whitehouse.gov? Official website of the White House. Now, this was up during the Obama administration. It was last updated October 14, 2016. I found out about this from Andre Michael Eglishon, guest hosting on Reverend Al Sharpton's radio show. And I would hear him talk about it frequently. And, you know, I went to whitehouse.gov and read it, man. And this is deep. Now, some of these things I knew about, but it puts all this stuff in one document, okay? Extremely important, everything from education to unemployment. President Obama cut the unemployment rate for African Americans was cut by more than half under President Obama, okay? Trump gives President Obama absolutely no credit for the economy, absolutely no credit for a low unemployment rate when Trump came into office, okay? So check that out. Progress of the African American Community under during the Obama administration. 99% of the people, I see Facebook posts, people talk about Obama didn't do this, Obama didn't do that. 99.9% of the time, they won't provide this document because they haven't done any research. I can listen to what people say. I can tell what they haven't read. They also haven't read the report card, January 2017, from the National Urban League, which was a report card of the Obama administration. That was the last report card for the Obama administration. You should read that, National Urban League website. Okay, how's everybody doing? Okay, share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. Hey, African-American business owners, post the name of your African-American owned business here on the thread of the broadcast. You can advertise with us. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We have a special promotion, buy 1 month, get 1 month free. Buy 1 month, get 1 month free. We'll put your 60-second commercial. If you have one, if not, we can record one. We'll put your 60-second commercial in the audio podcast of our radio show, the African History Network show. We're on 6 different podcast platforms. As soon as Stitcher updates, it'll be on 7 podcast platforms because I contacted Stitcher yesterday and today. So we're getting Stitcher updated. But we're on blogtalkradio.com, tunein.com, iTunes, Castbox, FM Player, and Acast. And then we'll be on Stitcher in the next few days because I just uploaded a new broadcast today. So we'll be on Stitcher also. We reach thousands of people across the country weekly. So you can advertise your African-American owned business, your upcoming event, things like that with us, okay? Also, you can register for the online courses I teach. We have a 10-course online bundle pack. They're all on demand. It also includes Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, okay? All right, let's go back to this quickly. This is a real example of leveraging our economics to push a political agenda. And they have white people involved in this also, divesting dollars from the privatized prisons, which is good. So they have some woke white folks. That's good. You need them. Okay, so the move comes after a scathing federal audit of private prison facilities last year. And after 8 immigrant detainees have died in the last fiscal year, while in private immigration detention centers, which house 65% of immigration and customs enforcement detainees, according to Stringer's office. Quote, morally, the industry wants to turn back the clock on years of progress on criminal justice, and we can't sit idly by and watch that happen. Stringer said divesting is simply the right thing to do financially and morally. So read this article, NYC Pension Fund to back out of investments in private prisons, NewYorkDailyNews.com, June 8th, 2017, okay? June 8th, 2017. These are some documents that you should download. These are some documents you should download. One, from the Congressional Black Caucus, cbc.house.gov. This is the 125-page agenda in March of 2017 that they presented to Donald John Trump, and he probably hasn't read all of it even today. It's called We Have a Lot to Lose. We Have a Lot to Lose, Solutions to Advance Black Families in the 21st Century. They have information here that every African-American organization across the country can adopt something from this to create a very powerful agenda to push at a local, county, state, and national level. And the great thing about this, not only in the beginning on page 8, they deal with some history of African-Americans to show how we got into this predicament, but they deal with various problems. They break it into sections, whether you deal with unemployment, healthcare, voter suppression, things like this, criminal justice. They lay out the problems. Then they have a section where they lay out policies, actual policies, bills that have been written, that have been proposed to address these issues. So these are policies that have to gain support from the masses to push these policies through the House, through the Senate, to be signed into law by the president. Okay, to address these issues. The policies they laid out, written by lawmakers, they show you the correlation between the politics and addressing the problems, addressing the issues. So that's from cbc.house.gov. We Have a Lot to Lose, Solutions to Advance Black Families in the 21st Century. Then you have this other document from the Congressional Black Caucus. Their website is cbc.house.gov. This is called What Did Trump Do the First 100 Days? Hashtag Stay Woke List, okay? What did Trump do the first 100 days? Hashtag Stay Woke List. So we know that during the presidential campaign, Donald Trump asked the question, what the hell do you have to lose to African Americans, okay? Many of us didn't understand at the time how much we had to lose, all right? Because we didn't understand the policies from the Obama administration that were at stake, okay? And we see that Trump, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III as Attorney General, who was deemed too racist to be a federal judge in 1986, he's now Attorney General. They redeclared the war on drugs May 12, 2017, which was winding down under President Obama. See, a lot of people don't know that the U.S. prison population dropped to its lowest point in December of 2015 under President Obama. It dropped down to 1.53 million from a peak of 2.3 million. Because I read the reports from the Department of Justice. I read the Department of Justice report from December 2016 about the period ending December 2015. Okay, like I said, I do research. A lot of people don't know this. All right, and President Obama gets absolutely no credit for this. And I can't figure out why either. Read this article from Newsweek.com, Proper Documentation Ends All Conversation. This deals with the prison population. Most people don't even know this. Okay, U.S. prison population exceeded 1.5 million in 2015. And they talk about the drop in the prison population, and they have the link to the report from the Department of Justice. This is a 1-page report, 1.5-page report. You can read it, and it tells you U.S. prison population dropped down to 1.53 million. It's not 2.3 million anymore, like they show you in the documentary 13th, right? Which is it's all right. So it's okay. It's all right. 13th. there's some problems with the document, but it's all right. It's a good effort. Okay. And then, so what did Trump do? The first 100 days, hashtag stay woke list. Then also Indivisible Guide, a practical guide for resisting the Trump agenda. So I first found out about this on the Rachel Maddow show. Okay. And this guy was put together by former congressional staffers. What they did was they took the strategies used by the Tea Party to fight against President Obama. They put this into a document of strategies to fight against the Trump regime, the Trump administration. And a lot of organizations all across the country have sprung up in the past year and a half or so. A lot of them are organizing based upon this document here. It's called Indivisible. Okay, go to indivisibleguide.com, indivisibleguide.com, download this. All right, these are all free documents. I took these to the printer, got them printed up. But these are things that we have to understand how to strategize. And we have to understand the issue. We have to understand the policies and understand how these policies and how politics impacts every aspect of our life. And the economics is related to this. The economics is not separate from this. The economics is related to this, all right? Okay, so once again, we were talking about the protests taking place in Chicago, and I'm dealing with showing you real life examples of us fighting back through different types of economic withdrawal strategies. Let's go to some of your comments. Okay, Freddie said, please come back to Africa. Greg Bankston, how you doing, Greg? You're all right. The Black Z card, new credit building card is here. Yeah, people post the name of your African-American owned business here on the thread of the broadcast. We have a few slots left. You can advertise with the African History Network. Email us at africanhistorynetwork.com, customer service at africanhistorynetwork.com, customer service at africanhistorynetwork.com, okay? Because we have some new commercials from advertisers coming up tomorrow. I talked about the lecture I did, lessons from the film Black Panther. So we have a 6 DVD Black Panther bundle pack. It includes 3 of my lectures done with the film Black Panther. It's on sale right now, $45, regularly $75. It includes 3 lectures I've done dealing with the film Black Panther, including the one I did for children. And it includes The Light of Ancient Egypt Awakens the African Mind to Economic Empowerment, Human Guinea Pigs, The History of the Tuskegee Experiment on the Negro Male. That's the Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis on the Negro male. Contrary to popular belief, they did not inject them with syphilis. There were 600 men in the study. Some of the men had an early form of syphilis, which has no symptoms. Other men in the study did not have syphilis at all. The study was supposed to last between 6 to 9 months, ended up lasting 40 years. So I deal with the whole history of the Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis on the Negro male, which was administered by the U.S. Public Health Service Department, U.S. Public Health Service Department. And then also you get Malcolm X 50 years later, why is he still relevant? Malcolm X 50 years later, why is he still relevant? So we posted the thread. We posted the information here on the thread of the broadcast. Is also on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. That's the 6 DVD Black Panther bundle pack, okay? All right. Let's see here. Okay, I read Malcolm, pensions are doomed just like unions. Okay, that doesn't mean get rid of them. I mean, some people are living off of their pensions. Pensions still have their purpose. Some pensions are underfunded. Some may not be. All right. Is the protest over? Okay, Art, yeah, I answered your question. Feeds on our thread of our broadcast, feeds right here on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Okay, Carl Sally said, thank you for that. We have James in Vallejo, California. So I'll be out in California August 10th through the 12th. for Return of the Gods, the Real Family Reunion in San Diego. So I'll be speaking there. Visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com for more information of the live hip hop performances. Come out for an amazing show of live hip hop, motivational speakers, live African dancers, martial arts demonstration, yoga. There'll be an award ceremony, so I'm being awarded Professor Kaba Kamene, Booker T. Coleman from the Hidden Colors documentaries in 1804, Queen Afua, just some of the people. You have the comedian Michael Collier, who is hosting. You have Lord Jamar from Brand Nubians, and Rod Digger as well. Okay, Kevin, Shalonda, John, how's everybody doing? Omawali. Okay, Shaquila. Okay, there's a few of the people watching. Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to check it out also. And we'll put this on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, on YouTube as well, okay? Be sure to listen to the African History Network show Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9:10 a.m. to Superstation, 9:10 a.m. to Superstation. We have the information at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have the info there. You can listen to audio podcasts. And you can also advertise with the African History Network as well. Email us customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, okay? All right, so we have to understand the relationship between African history, culture, economic empowerment, and politics. Economic empowerment, political empowerment, we have to have a synthesis of them. They're not separate, they're interconnected, interrelated. All the great African nations we talk about, whether it's ancient Kemet, Ethiopia, Abyssinia, Ta-Nehisi, Ta-Seti, Nubia, Ghana, Songhai, Mali, Zimbabwe, Dar-Tichit, all the Benin, whatever, all these great African nations, they had their history and culture intact. They had African spiritual systems. They had a African cultural paradigm. They had control of land. They had agriculture. They could grow their own food. They could sustain themselves. They usually had control of some type of natural resources, mineral resources, whether it's gold, like in Ghana, whether it's gold mines, salt mines, things like this. We see Mansa Musa, the Emperor of Mali, becomes Emperor 1312 AD, richest man in the history of the world. When he goes on his Hajj to Mecca, he takes tons of gold with him and he gives it away. He stabilizes economies of different communities and nations on the way to Mecca. So they had control. They had these various societies, these various countries, nations. They had an economic system. They had an economic system. They had a control of natural resources. They could sustain themselves. They could grow their own food. And they had some type of political system. It wasn't just do what you want to do, laissez-faire, no hierarchy. No, they have a political system. They have a king. They have an oba. They have a chief. They have a Nasubiti. They have a pharaoh. They have a political structure. They have an economic structure. And they have some type of structure in place, some type of unit, some type of group, whether you call it an army or what have you, to protect what they have also. They have all this, okay? So we have to have a synthesis of this as well. It's not just African history and culture. We have to have a synthesis of the history and culture, the economics, and the politics. All right, so look, we're gonna get out of here. Hey, remember at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Remember, a people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. A people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. The history and culture is not designed to be escapism. Okay, so we can try to metaphysically transport ourselves back to 3000 BC in ancient Egypt, because we don't want to deal with Trump, what's going on right now, and Donald Trump. Many of us suffer from PTSD, President Trump stress disorder. Many of us suffer from PTSD, President Trump stress disorder, but we have to organize and strategize to fight against this. Okay, we've been through worse. Doesn't mean don't do anything about what's going on right now. Okay, that's ridiculous. That's stupid. But we've been through worse. Okay, our ancestors went through, when I say we, I mean collectively our ancestors, because we didn't go through 246 years of slavery. Our ancestors did. Most of us have no clue what that's like. But I've read slave narratives. We can read about it. But us collectively have been through worse. Okay, so we'll survive this, but we have to fight against it as well. This is why midterm elections are so important. This is why we have to leverage our economics to enforce our political agenda. And on election day, these people who we call on the radio shows every day complaining about, that's our time to rise up and fire their behinds. That's our time to rise up and fire their behinds, okay? And we enforce our politics to let them, to show them that there are consequences when you screw us over. All right, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.